Three beautiful children, a husband who played cricket for Australia and a fun social life with great friends. Steve Waugh's wife Lynette had a pretty perfect life. That is until she suffered a devastating stroke at just 40 years old. Lynette had a long road to recovery, but shockingly, just 15 years later, she suffered another stroke, spending 10 days in ICU and needing further care. Steve and Lynette join us this morning to share their story and important life-saving tips. It's nice to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Lynette, can you take us back to that moment when you woke up from your first stroke? Did you have any idea what had happened?
No, my first stroke was actually an AVM stroke. I'd been having stroke symptoms that day, but I didn't actually recognise them. I didn't know what they were. I thought I was just a mum having a bad day. I was having terrible headache, migraine. The light was affecting my eye, so I was walking around the house covering my eye. Then I just had this overwhelming need to lay down and sleep. And as I was walking, I could feel that I was leaning to one side. It wasn't until my sister came over to check on me after she'd been contacted that said that my speaking was slurred. So an ambulance was called, and then all of a sudden I was a stroke patient. The ambulance, I went to hospital. I ended up in ICU. I had brain surgery and I survived. It was both a very worrying and confusing time for us all. And one thing I learned was that my stroke was not just about me who suffered the stroke, but it was about us.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, Cor, because Steve, you were away for most of that year playing for Australia. How did life change following Let's first stroke?
Yeah, well, actually, I just I'd finished sort of cricket, so I was actually on a book tour and I was interstate when I got the call. So I sort of flew back on a private jet to get to the hospital in time, but it was very traumatic, and the recovery process was a long time. It was ongoing, and having three children under 10 years of age, I basically became Mr. Mum for a couple of years. So I learned all about domestic duties and cooking and cleaning and doing all the housework. But the priority was for Lynette to get rest to recover. That was the number one thing, because severely fatigued and a lot of ongoing issues about relearning things. So basically I had to hold back on what I was doing, and the family came first and Lynette's recovery, and that meant giving her some rest.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Lynette, you mentioned you were in ICU, then you had brain surgery. How tough and how long was the recovery process after that stroke?
Well, when you have a stroke, what I learned was that a stroke can affect your body, it affects your emotions, it affects the way that you think. The recovery process is tough. It's long, it has good and bad days, and it's a lifelong process or a journey. Recovery for both of us was slow. It had some slight improvements. The changes did come, but it takes a long time.
Well, and how common is it, I guess, or what are the chances of having two, Lynette? Because I'd imagine when you had a stroke, you kind of, to a degree, think it's behind you, but then you had a second one 15 years later.
I mean, that's one thing, Tristan. I never, ever forget that there's always a possibility after you have your first stroke that you might have that second one, which is both, is very concerning. So the one thing that I really tried to do was just, make my health really important to me. So I just made sure that I was meeting all the health assessments. I made sure that I was embracing a new healthy lifestyle. So I was eating well, keep moving. It's just the main thing that I could learn was, for me, was that the fast stroke symptoms. Yeah. And I think when I look back on my second stroke, it probably was what allowed me to almost survive that stroke. I was at a function for my daughter. She was just celebrating her Year 12 formal, so it was a terrible place to have a stroke. But I came out of the function and my hearing was very distorted. I was feeling incredibly nauseous, and then I got a really intense pain at the back of my neck. And I just recalled at that instant that with a stroke, that time is crucial. So I just went to a stranger and I said, "I'm having a stroke, call me an ambulance."
So you knew the signs from your first stroke, but Steve, you were actually with Lynette for her second stroke. Did you notice anything strange?
Not really. Looking back, maybe there was some headaches leading up to it and some hearing sort of issues, but we just put that down as sort of ongoing process of recovery from the first stroke because it is ongoing. We have the recovery. But yeah, we're at our daughter's Year 12 graduation ceremony. Lynette and my daughter Lillian had just had a dance on the floor, and Lynette went off to go to the toilet, and then one of the other parents came back into the function room and said, I think your wife needs you in the foyer, she's not feeling well.
Oh, wow.
And so I raced out in the foyer. Lynette was sitting down by herself. There was a few other people around looking at what was going on, but she had this intense pain in her head. She said she felt like she got hit over the head by a baseball bat. She was feeling nauseous, pale, and she didn't want to move. And by that time, she summoned someone in her to call an ambulance, so it was on its way. So I just tried to sort of remain calm and keep Lynette calm and say, look, the ambulance is on the way, you're going to be okay. We've been through this before, so just try and relax and take deep breaths. So, yeah, as Lynette said, she recognised the symptoms and called the ambulance straight away, which is crucial when you see something going wrong.
Yeah, you talk about the symptoms. Lynette, what's your advice to everyone, or what should people look out for to catch a stroke early, someone who might be susceptible?
Well, I think that the first thing that's important is that you have to realise that a stroke can affect anyone at any age, at any time. I mean, I always thought that stroke's something that affected older people. And I never thought that at my age, I was 40, and even I didn't even really think at 50 that I was that category. But as I said, strokes can affect anyone. I mean, the first step to stroke prevention is to have a risk stroke assessment. I mean, I think Bloom's, the pharmacy chemistry, it provides free stroke risk assessments. I mean, they're simple, they take less than 10 minutes, and I can only strongly advise everybody to have strict risk assessments.
Yeah, and this is...
When you think you're having some symptoms, I mean, check someone's face. Is their mouth dropped? Arms, can they lift their arms together up above their horizontal? And then the speech is, I guess, is speech slurred, that they understand what you're saying. And if any of those symptoms are there, then I guess time is the essence. So call 000 and get off to see a doctor.
And this is the week to do it, isn't it? It's National Stroke Week. You can log on to that website that was on our screen just before Bloom's the Chemist to take a risk assessment. Lynette and Steve, thank you so much for sharing your story today. It's such important information. We really appreciate it.
Good on you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.